This is Maddie. What's up?
Yeah.
Hi YouTube, happy Sunday and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Maddie. I am an online lifestyle and contest prep coach with the Team MPowered Fitness. That is my company, but y'all make it up. If you guys are interested in joining our team or booking a one-on-one call with me, the link is always down below to apply. We are breaking things up part 2 this week with another topic that I really felt called to share with you, as I've shared kind of my whole journey from being an NPC bikini competitor all the way up through all the shows that I did and into my pro show win and now leading up to my pro debut. And that is the topic of the psychology of bodybuilding, really the emotional and mental health aspect of things, because we know that this sport, I know there's such a heavy emphasis on the training component and the nutritional component, and I certainly love to talk with you guys about all of those things, but I would be doing you a disservice to not also address, in my opinion, the most important of all, which is the psychology, the behavior, the emotion, all of the mental components of this sport. So I had a beautiful opportunity. I have became very close friends with Miss Claudia Mays, who's also a bodybuilder, but also a licensed psychologist. And she has just a wealth of knowledge. So we had an opportunity last weekend to team up together and talk about some of the topics that we felt were important to address and that we want to share with you. If you guys haven't yet, last week I posted a video with Celeste Rains-Turk on my journey and addressed a ton of the psychology behind bodybuilding and the things that I've gone through. And a lot of you guys got takeaways from that, and I was so honored and happy to hear that. So my hope is that we can continue kind of exploring this path together, and that this video kind of supplements or adds to that. So without further ado, if you guys are on the Stairmaster right now, sweating it out through a cardio session, if you are driving to work, or if you're sitting down eating your Ninja Creamy, I hope that you guys enjoy this video. Sit back and relax and have fun. All right. Hey, YouTube. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Maddie. I am the CEO of Team MPowered Fitness and a new IFBB Pro. I am currently on my road to pro debut. This is a deviation from my Road to Pro Debut series because I really wanted to take this opportunity to bring Miss Claudia onto our channel and talk about something that is so near and dear to my heart, and I think is sometimes swept under the rug when we are prepping for shows and things like that, and that is mental health and truly the psychology of competing. I think it's no less important than your nutrition, your training, your recovery, and this is a huge facet of that, and we've got a wealth of knowledge here to share with you today. So sit back, enjoy your cardio session, enjoy your meal, or I don't know, your drive home from work, and enjoy this and all the nuggets of knowledge that come with it. So today we are joined with Miss Claudia Mays. Claudia was born in New York and moved to Austria in Europe at the age of 4, where she spent most of her life with her mom while visiting her dad in New York every summer. She actually obtained her master's degree in psychology and went on to get licensed as both a clinical and health psychologist. She moved to, is it Alabama?
It is.
You live in Alabama. Yeehaw. She moved to Alabama 10 years ago.
I live here. I'm not from here, clearly.
Accent, dead giveaway. She actually worked as a, dear goodness, max security prison for male offenders as a prison psychologist. She got certified as a health coach and redid her licensure as a professional counselor because that licensure from Austria was not recognized here in Hall-Ye Town. And so she started working in private practice about 2 years ago. As for bodybuilding, of course, we love to marry psychology and bodybuilding here on this channel. So she started competing in 2020, did a couple shows in Tennessee and Florida. Not so hot, maybe. She gave it another go in 2022 at the Clash and at Nationals. And then most recently in 2023, Miss Thing won her class at her regional show in Montgomery, went to win the overall at Greater Tennessee Valley and Huntsville. And she ended her season at North Americans. So she's currently in a little internal health phase. So we certainly have an appreciation for that. She's got 2 children. She wears another badge of honor, and that is as a lovely mom. She's got a 15-year-old son and an 8-year-old daughter. And she is fantastically raising those 2 kids bilingually in English and in German. And she was also a ballerina. So that's the real reason why we have her on here. Did I leave anything out, Claudia?
Maddie, thank you so much. What an intro. I appreciate you. And I appreciate you so much for sharing your space to let me in a little bit to talk about my passion. It's crazy listening to you describing me. It's been forever long that I've worked in mental health, it's been more than 20 years, which is crazy. It's always been such a pleasure of mine to help people and learn about people, understand behavior, and now having the opportunity to talk about another passion of mine, which is bodybuilding and mental health, is just, it's a joy. And I appreciate you greatly for sharing your space.
Great. Well, thank you so much. That means the world. Guys, as a little backstory, I wrote to Claudia and I said, would you mind getting some topics together, so I can have an idea of where we're going to kind of lead our conversation? Well, lo and behold, Miss Claudia outdid herself, and she wrote a very wonderful document up with so many good topics. I didn't even know where to begin. So my thought process is this: we are going to talk about 3 or 4 of them today for you all. Ones that I felt were kind of just really spoke to me for today. And then my hope is that we'll kind of make a little series out of this. And if you guys like this content, then we'll keep bringing her back. And if you don't, then unsubscribe, because we're going to keep bringing her back. So one of the first things that I saw you talk about on here, such a good one, is that bodybuilding will not heal you. She said it will actually expose you. So I first want to talk about what is the difference here between healing and exposing.
I think a lot of us, myself included, we go into bodybuilding assuming it will heal us. We want to skip the exposure part. And as we go through the lifestyle and prepare for a show and diet down, we realize, whoopsie, things are coming up. We are literally shedding layers and layers and diving into discomfort beyond the physical. And things are, surfacing. So bodybuilding will expose that, will make us vulnerable to our wounds and our traumas, our unhealed, stuff, our patterns, versus healing. But one requires the other. So we cannot heal without, exposure, or I like to say we cannot fix without seeing it. If I which just happened to me recently, I heard a loud noise from, like they say in the South, up underneath the hood. And so if you take the car to the mechanic and describe, hey, there's a loud noise coming from underneath the hood, what's the first thing the mechanic is going to say? They're going to say, pop the hood. Exactly. They're going to say, pop the hood. So if I go, oh, no, we're not popping the hood, the mechanic is going to be like, well, didn't you say you heard something there? Well, I do, and I need for you to fix it. But see, he can't, because he doesn't see where the problem is. I'm not allowing the hood to get popped. And so that's the exposure part. It's necessary.
Yeah, it's so funny when I saw this and I was like, wow, this is so powerful when I read that, because
I reflected on my own personal journey to the bodybuilding stage. I had no intent. It was 4, I think, 4 years ago. I had no intent on ever being a bodybuilder. I knew what bodybuilders were. I admired them, but I was in a very grave state. I was very significantly underweight. I'm 5'5". I was 90 pounds at my smallest. And I had seen clinical psychologists, psychiatrists, eating disorder therapists, and nobody could diagnose me with anything because I've never looked in the mirror and seen a girl that's overweight or too skinny or needs to fix this. I've never body shamed myself. And so it couldn't be diagnosed as anorexia, and it couldn't be diagnosed as bulimia because I never binged or purged or any of those things. And so my mom and I came together, and she's like, okay, so we got to get you help, right? And what is that going to take? And what it took was hiring a coach that I trusted to, reverse diet me, get me to a healthier spot. And throughout the process, I mean, I give bodybuilding in and of itself the credit for healing me. But I will say it required a lot of exposure. It required me, I mean, on the physical, I know you said it isn't just physical, but on a physical level, I felt my most confident when I was really lean and really, really tiny. I would actually look at pictures and I would have my mom angle the camera to where I looked bigger than I was because I was so lean and I was so skin and bones that it was unattractive to the naked eye. And being in a bikini and taking check-in pictures for my coach was probably the first time where I could see like, wow, you are far too lean. And it was the process of reverse dieting and really challenging my thoughts around food and how I perceived food and how I saw kind of this. At the time, I had a very calculated formula. I had to burn X amount of calories in order to eat X amount of calories, and everything was meticulous and tracked. And while I was still tracking, it was the bodybuilding that exposed those behaviors, challenged those thought patterns, and healed me on the other side. And so I actually think, the exposure, to your point, can lead to the healing, but we have to be willing to walk down that road. Now, when you say bodybuilding will not heal you, what is an example, if you could think of one, of somebody who might venture into bodybuilding like for just healing, like maybe without the exposure part?
That could be many things. It could be, you mentioned disordered eating. That could be one motivation for individuals to want to start bodybuilding, to look a certain way. It could be an idea of receiving external gratification, because what do we see from bodybuilding? We don't see the day-to-day meal prep and waking up early, like I said, meal prep, of course, the training. That's more so the part that we do see. But then the stress management, really ensuring sleep, good internal health. We don't see that part. That's not glamorous. That's not sexy, right? But then the stage shots, of course, they are being shown. And naturally, when athletes win, we see that. But we don't see 200, 600, 700 that didn't win. We don't see that part. So it could also be, like I said, the external validation to avoid the internal work, thinking there's that shortcut through bodybuilding.
Yeah. And I think that kind of the exclamation on this point, and the point that we're trying to make here, is that you will get the healing out of it. In fact, you will probably heal more things than you even knew you were suffering from. Right. But you can't go into bodybuilding expecting the healing without the exposure. This is a prerequisite to that, right? Like, it's just like you can't go into a weight loss journey where it's taken you 2, 3, 4 years of trauma and poor eating behaviors to add all this subcutaneous fat. and expect to get it off in 12 weeks. It's just not going to happen if it's taking you 2, 3, and 4 years. So it's the same. That's a great analogy for this. You're going to be exposed before you get healed. There's going to be discomfort before you get to that pinnacle moment where you look back and go, wow. For example, here's another one of kind of something that I went through throughout my journey, just from September really to December when I was prepping for nationals. I have never in my life, and I wasn't even aware that I was doing this, I have never in my life truly loved myself, truly appreciated my body and all that I was doing my whole life. And you can probably relate to this too as a ballet dancer. If it's not hard, then it's not working, was kind of my MO. Mm-hmm. And to some extent, that can be true, right? If you're going through a fat loss phase, if you're going through a prep, there's going to be tough moments. There's going to be trials. But I never stopped to appreciate my body in those tough moments, in those trials. I never stopped to appreciate my brain and how I was coaching myself through those hard moments. And it was once I got that pro card that I looked back and I was like, and not even looked back, it was the journey there where I was taking moments to stop and pause and appreciate myself. And it was that prep that exposed the very thing that I needed healing from, which was I needed to learn how to appreciate this one vessel that I have. But it was tough, like thinking, I remember that realization of like, oh my gosh, my body is doing so much for me right now, and I haven't even thanked her. Mm-hmm. And it was that exposure, like you said, to lead to that healing. And as a result, on the other side now, I feel so much more in tune with my body. Like when my head and heart are in two different places, it's what I've been talking about on my channel for the past 3 to 4 weeks. Like I am feeling really exhausted right now. You know, I'm itching for a break, and it's been challenging and tough for me, but I'm so appreciative because before I would have just hushed that voice. And now I've got this constant line of communication between my head and heart. I'm not trying to, one of your other points in here, and we'll talk about it maybe on another day, but I'm not trying to think my way into or out of something.
Yes. And you mentioned so many good things here. But one that stood out initially was expectations, right? When we enter, a lot of us at a younger age, well, I wasn't that young when I started bodybuilding, but it's you don't expect that exposure part. Mm-hmm. You expect the healing part, which will come, like you said, but with that, a great deal of discomfort is going to be required of you to endure.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And then the self-talk, that's another big topic that, you know, we're so used to the grind and going through the motion that we failed to monitor our self-talk. And that's the one that's going on all the time. We don't talk to anybody as much as we do to ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so that's a very, very good point right there also, that a lot of times when we, you know, dedicate ourselves to the grind and we're in prep, and our self-talk becomes pretty negative, or even deep into improvement season.
Girl, it's almost like before this call, you were in my brain. You could see the veins sticking out right here. It's like my thoughts are like, so this is like the perfect segue right here, because another topic that you had, and I saw this and I was like, Bible, literally, I want to take all these quotes and just hang them up all over this office. But it was that she had written, it is impossible to hate yourself into a new physique. And if you could see my eyes, they have tears in them right now, because I work with a ton of amazing, amazing women. And I've heard a handful, more than a handful of times, I'm so unhappy with my body and I want to prep. That's my motivation to prep. And I will say that even the healthiest of athletes. I can throw her name out here because we're very, very close. One of my athletes who's gone through a significant weight loss journey prior to working with me. Very, very proud of herself. Once she got to, you know, her desired weight and her desired physique, she decided she was going to enter into a contest prep with me. She's done amazingly well. But that's somebody who entered into prep with a very healthy relationship with themselves. And every single week in her check-in, just like all of us, there's something that she's pinpointing, right? There's something that she's like, I wish I could change this. Am I ready? I don't know. Prep is going to pull that out in you. You are in the right sport if you are second guessing, if you are wondering, right? If you are at times thinking negatively, like I'm not saying you're in the right sport and that's not the right mindset to always have, but it's normal. And if you already come into a contest prep or a weight loss journey with that negativity, this isn't going to fix that. You are constantly putting yourself, I mean, the sport in and of itself is going up on stage in front of judges who have never heard you speak, who you likely haven't had a conversation with. They don't know your personality and they are judging your package.
And of course, they're looking for quote unquote flaws.
Right.
So it's really important to not internalize that, because our thoughts, if we keep thinking the same thought, it becomes a belief.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes a conviction. It becomes an idea of yourself. And if it's something that, like you said, a judge who you don't know, they don't know you, says one thing about your physique, your external, to then associate that with things like worthiness or value, that's where it becomes tricky.
And I think as you're getting ready to get up onto the stage, the contrast to that, for those that are wondering, you know, it's appreciating not just your physique and how far you have came, but it's also appreciating the hardworking, you know, strong-willed, persevering person that lives within you. It's the, you know, the person that's invested time and resources into coaching and posing. And I mean, that's enough to appreciate, because we know that competing takes a huge slice of that pie. And your time could be going to kids, furthering your education, working, making money, right? Instead of spending it, all these things. And it's like, if you could posit yourself to a position of, it's not, what we're not trying to get at is, oh, I love my body and it's all sunshine. Like, you might not get there, you know, you might still have those moments, and that's okay. But if you're not taking these yield signs as like throughout your prep and like appreciating how far you've came, we are in a losing sport. It's going to be a very humbling experience when you probably don't get your pro card or your national qualification at the first go. You might not even win your class. And so how much better, how much, I don't know if the word is how much differently, but how different could it be if you got what placing you got and you were like, oh my God, but I'm so proud. I'm so proud. I'm so proud of the woman that went through 12, 16, gosh, sometimes 20, 30 weeks of becoming a more self-aware, a more diligent, a more organized, a stronger persevering female, and to make it to this point. It feels so much better than getting up on that stage, hating yourself through the process, getting that placing, and having that placing confirm, and it will. That placing will confirm all the things that you've been telling yourself. So you can choose if you want it to confirm the fact that you're not enough, you're not worthy, you didn't do it, you're never going to get it. Or do you want it to challenge or supplement, your belief of, you know what, I did my best. I'm so proud of myself and how far I've came. Because the judge is placing, it's not confirming or denying how proud they are of you.
Good point.
Those two things are mutually exclusive. We have to understand that in this sport, what they're judging.
And it's a moment in time, right? Our bodies, our physique changes all the time. And it's that moment in time that we are rewarded, maybe, hopefully, maybe not, by a panel of judges.
Mm-hmm.
I like the idea of both our past and our future being constructs, meaning, well, the past, of course, has passed and the future hasn't happened yet. So it's a matter of how we choose to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Even previous challenges or traumas, it's a choice how to look at it, from a victim perspective or from a survivor perspective. And that makes a huge difference. It doesn't change the external. It doesn't change what happened. It's an internal shift. It's an internal mindset. And the same with what's about to happen. We don't know that. But by focusing on either so much, we're missing life, which is literally happening now. All those little moments at the moment, that's our life.
Yeah. Well, I think you, one word that I want to emphasize in your statement right there is focus. Because the reality is, if anyone that watches this is going to think to themselves, well, of course I appreciate my hard work. Of course I appreciate the mindset of the competitor mindset. Of course I appreciate the fact that I said no to, my kids' chicken nuggets and I sat there eating my chicken and rice. Of course, I'm proud of myself for devoting 30 minutes on Saturday with my posing coach. Of course, that's fine. But when you stand in the mirror, are you facing this way and saying and picking out everything you hate? Or are you standing this way and recognizing that you still got 3 weeks to go? You still got 6 weeks to go. Leave that at that angle, pause it yourself, focus on just acknowledging the internal, right. Validate yourself, validate the fact that you are doing the damn thing, that you are eating your food, that you're tracking your macros, that you're getting those steps in. It's not that you have to even cultivate these positive woo-woo feelings. It's just where you're, are you standing where the sunlight is hitting you, or are you, cowering away from it? It's no different. Just posit yourself in a different way. And as a result, when you get up on stage, you're going to be able to separate the two. In the same exact vein, when you do win, it's so funny because, and I'm going back to my example of winning my pro card. I think had I not had that shift where I focused on something different than, all the negatives, all my body shaming, X, Y, and Z that I've done for every single show leading up to it. When I actually got that pro card win, it was like such a blip. Not that I'm not appreciative of it, but I was like, oh, okay. The big win for me was the growth, the internal growth, truthfully. That was the biggest win. And so,
right.
I think it was because I had focused on that the whole time. So what I'm saying here is, conversely, it's not always about losing and being able to differentiate, this has nothing to do with my worth. This has nothing to do with how hard working I am, or how much I've grown, or, how much I persevered through the tough times. Likewise, if you win, it also has nothing to do with that. Nothing. So it's funny how the effects of win versus loss are so minimized, and they're felt I guess, more accurately or more positively when you've separated the two. When it's not so much about, I love my abs in this picture. I've got great glutes. Judges confirm that I'm on this high horse, because you will fall too, right? As soon as you get that overall win, okay, now you're going to nationals. Or as soon as you go to nationals and you get that pro card, okay, now you're going to a pro debut and you're stepping up against Olympians. You will never be able to climb high enough on the ladder. So it's about not minimizing like the effect of the judges, but it is, it's about really being objective here. It's a placing, it's a score, it's a number, but there's so much that you've missed out on throughout this whole process. You got nothing out of it if all you got is a trophy or a medal or a pat on the back and come back next year. You got nothing out of it.
Right. And didn't Laura Lee just post something very similar along those lines after winning the Arnold, that it's not about what you get, it's about who you become in that process, something along those lines. And I thought that was a beautiful, beautiful way of putting it.
Yeah, I really, really, I love her so much. And let's talk about this. I actually, on the topic of Laura Lee, we can talk about this because I have a friend, her name is Christina, and she's a pro, and she made a post the other day where she had met Laura Lee, and she had asked Laura Lee, what would you tell an athlete who gets anxious and nervous on stage? And I read this post like 3 times because I'm very much the same way. I know I'm a posing coach. I know that I get a lot of people that are like, oh, you're such a natural. And I'm like, it's so funny because I don't see it or feel that at all. I feel at times very uncomfortable, very, very anxious getting on stage. And it's taken me a lot of, one of the topics I think we're kind of working down is the notion of we're self-confirming humans. I speak a lot about this with my athletes who will say something like, I had an athlete check in with me this week and she said, well, I'm just nervous because I know that when I get emotional, I tend to take that out on food. And I said, be very careful with the seed that you just planted there, because the identity you just slapped on your chest is that you're an emotional eater and that food has control over you. You just disempowered yourself right there. And this week, the very thing that you are likely going to do is confirm that, right? Just as we talked about the judges confirming, if we've only focused on the negative, then that placing is going to hold so much more weight. They are going to confirm every bias, every label that you have slapped on yourself. Fat, ugly, unworthy, not enough. It will confirm that. Now, in your beautiful Google sheet, you talked about redefining anxiety. Something that I talk with my athletes about. We don't have anxiety. When you have anxiety, it's like carrying around this big boulder, right? You're like, I'm Miss Anxious. That's me. No, you feel anxious. Feeling it is something that's very small, right? Sometimes in the past, when I have felt emotionally detached, when I have felt emotionally down, when I have felt depressed, I have leveraged food as a vice. It's very different than I am an emotional eater. I have anxiety is very different than sometimes I feel anxious, or I am anxious is very different than I have anxious feelings. It's bottling it up. It's making it smaller. It's making it an object, something that you control, something that does not always control you. It's not a label that lives on you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So when I think about, being anxious on stage and whatnot, it's sometimes I feel anxious, but anxious is actually a really beautiful thing, because when sometimes I feel anxious, I also know how to control it. It doesn't control me. It's not who I walk up on stage and become. It's just a feeling. And anxiety is a feeling. And if you can picture it right here, because we've already boiled it down to an object, all that anxiety is energy. So recognize it as that. Anxiety can also be excitement, right? The two can be the same thing. It's this butterfly feeling. It's this, oh my gosh, right? Like when you get anxious, it's a very similar feeling to excitement. But once again, it's about taking our bodies from here and just focusing here, right? So I want you to kind of talk about that. How would you wanted to touch on anxiety and reframing it to excitement. I kind of took the lead there, but.
Beautiful. No, absolutely beautiful how you describe that. I work on reframing a lot with my clients too, because like you said, anxiety should not be our identity. It shouldn't even be a diagnosis for a lot of us. It's currently very trendy to be anxious, but there's a very, big difference between actual clinical anxiety and a little bit of nervousness or excitement even. And so here's the thing with emotions. Emotions, we judge them, negative, positive, whatever, when really I think it can be very helpful to take that judgment out of the emotion and look at the emotion as providing us with information. And so when we take that judgment out of there and we evaluate this said anxiety, okay, what type of information is this feeling, this emotion trying to deliver? And sometimes it's excitement, like you said. That's a big difference, because if it's actual anxiety, a fear-based feeling, that can cause us to withdraw, that can cause us to avoid, versus excitement paired with a little curiosity makes you want to go toward something. So that's a very, very, big difference there. And talk about stepping on stage. I mean, there is a bunch of feelings that overcome us, but if we constantly focus on anxiety / being fear-based, it's going to keep us stuck.
Well, and to that point, right, we just talked about the label of I have anxiety, right? When someone says I have anxiety, it's like, oh shit, like stay away from her. She's got depression. She's got anxiety.
She has issues.
Right. But the difference is if you could shift your verbiage there to I feel anxious, that the word feel is almost like the gateway for you then to explore, okay, so what are the adjectives that I could use to describe this anxiety?
That's it. Exactly.
Is it, oh gosh, I can't go through that door? Or is it first date anxiety? Because first date anxiety is something we welcome. In the same freaking vein, something I tell my clients all the time, resistance, right? I am resistant. If I were to tell you, oh, I'm resistant, that is negative, immediately negative, got a negative connotation. What about I feel resistant? Because I can talk to you a lot about times where I have felt resistant, but I didn't pull back. I actually kept walking down that unknown path because I use resistance as a reminder. As a reminder, when you actually look up the definition of resistance, or what resistance comes from three things. Something being unfamiliar, something being the newness of something, or something being a posed challenge to you. Those are three reasons why you might feel resistant. None of them are negative. And so it's all about reframing. I am not resistant. I am feeling resistance. Explore that feeling, because just because you're feeling it, it might be because it's unfamiliar, it's new, or it's a challenge, and it might be a sign that you're on the right direction. And when I looked up the definition of anxiety, very similar here. Anxious can be defined in two ways. These are taken directly from Google. Number one, experiencing worry, unease, or nervousness, typically about an imminent event or something with an uncertain outcome. The other definition of anxiety, wanting something very much, typically with a feeling of unease. So even the first one, although it had a little bit more of a negative connotation, experiencing worry, unease, or nervousness, typically about an imminent event or something with an uncertain outcome. But when you emphasize that last part, nervousness about an uncertain outcome, or wanting something very much, typically with a feeling of unease, aren't both of those actually a really great reminder that you're in the right sport, that you're on the right path? Because we don't know the outcome of a placing, right? But it's kind of an exciting feeling that you're feeling a response to that. It's kind of a good thing that you're feeling some type of way about stepping up on that stage. Or conversely, wanting something very much and feeling uneasy about it. It's a damn beautiful reminder, right? I want this so bad. And so thus I'm feeling anxiety, as opposed to feeling anxiety. You know, it's way, way different.
Mm-hmm. Right. And if we were to numb that, we would miss the point.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, you mentioned there what I believe unites all of us as our biggest fear, which is the unknown. That's everybody's biggest fear because it's not predictable. It's not, we don't know what's coming. But again, it's a matter of reframing that. It can discourage us and cause us to revert back to comfort, which only thing comfort means is familiarity, predictability.
Mm-hmm.
Or it can cause us to, cool, this is a clean slate. I get to create it the way I want to. It can cause us to explore. It can cause us to step into it and elicit growth. Because as we know, growth does not happen out of comfort. It's not possible.
You know, I really appreciate you touching on that because, wow, this whole thing has become about Maddie's pro day or Maddie's win of her pro card. I'm reliving it right now. But I was with the same coach for 5 years, the very coach that helped me get to the other side of my eating disorder. And as you can imagine, that was a very strong relationship that we had developed because he had helped me see myself through to the other side of something. Now, I was very comfortable. It was very predictable. I knew what the process was like getting through a show with him. I knew what it was going to look like on the other side. You know, it was, all right, take the week, don't train, eat what you want. Very predictable. Going into the show, no one was going through my diet. No one was telling me to take out powders. Nobody was telling me to, you know, manipulate or to watch my sodium intake. I'm a girl who easily eats 5,000 milligrams of salt a day. I love it. But nobody was telling me that. Nobody was practicing my posing with me. I practiced it maybe once a week, once every other week on a bad week. And thus I kept getting the same outcome. I did like 10 or 12 shows last year and I just kept getting worse. But it felt good because it was predictable. It was familiar. And so I decided to make a change. I hired a new coach. I went about it a different way. Let me tell you, I had no idea what was going on. And in fact, I hired that coach. I had 8 weeks with them to get to know them. And then we went into my first prep. They didn't know my body. I had no idea what was. In fact, I could look back at old check-ins and I was like, you know, 7 weeks out, what do your peak weeks look like? Or are you going to have me take stuff out on peak week? What do my workouts look like on peak week? Like I was trying to just get them to give me every single detail because I was so nervous because it was so new. But once I got that pro card, it really affirmed for me that all that nervousness, all that newness, all that unfamiliarity first of all, I didn't resist it. I welcomed any feelings of discomfort. I was like, you know what? This is different, so it must be good. And once I got the pro card, I realized, oh my gosh, everything about that prep, everything about my show day, everything about the guidance. I mean, one clear cut and dry example, they were going through my diet every single day. They were having me take things out and add things in, and it was like a math equation. I was like stunned that there was this attention to detail. At times it didn't feel all so great because I was like, I never did this before. I don't know how I'm going to respond, but it's the difference that got me what I got. Now, fast forward, I've got the pro card. I'm now heading into my pro debut. People have seen my body on Instagram. I've shown people my side by side of when I was 3 weeks out from my pro card win and now 3 weeks out from a pro debut. That's two different girls. One looks tiny, tiny, tiny and very, very lean. The other one looks very, very full and like 10 weeks out. But I have to remind myself each and every day in this prep that I'm in a new pond now. I am not the expert here. I have never been up on stage against pros. And this is all new to me. The whole way that you prioritize now being full as opposed to being so shredded. You have to be a little bit more, I think, dialed in and like shredded and peeled at the NPC level because there's just not as much muscular development. You see these girls on the IFBB stage, they're big. They've got a lot of muscle. So you don't need to get as peeled, as withered down, as shredded because there's more muscle pushing up against the skin. So now at this level, I don't know how my body's supposed to look. I've never been here before, but I have to remind myself, no, it's that newness. Just because you're feeling uncomfy right now and you can't see the road in front of you doesn't mean that you're not where you belong. You're with people that you trust. So trust their guidance, loosen your grip a little bit because gripping tight, it's not even serving you. You're giving something energy and thought that you could be leveraging elsewhere.
Yeah, totally. It's the difference between forcing and allowing, right? Which is something that, I'm still learning, especially in the sport of bodybuilding. And it doesn't forcing an outcome, it doesn't serve us. And to what we discussed earlier, it comes at the expense of us being able to enjoy the journey. Mm-hmm. If we hyper focus and try to force and try to control everything, mm-hmm. which is impossible.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I definitely think that's about striking the right balance, right? And this is a topic we could probably talk on another day, but maybe to give you guys a teaser on a future episode, a lot of us, if you're seasoned in this sport, have worked with numerous coaches, right? And you're going to explore different coaches at one time or another. Now, if you enter into that relationship with this new coach that you willingly chose to hire, and you're constantly bringing up, well, my old coach did it this way. Well, just so you know, we did it this way. I'm not sitting here saying, because I did the same thing, but I'm not sitting here saying like, shut up, but recognize you chose something in you, instinct, gut, guided you to, your girl needs a new path. So instead of trying to take your flashlight and find the road, turn your flashlight off. They've got it. You're winding yourself up more than you need to. Take solace and refuge and ground yourself in this unfamiliar path and allow that to be something that cultivates anxiousness or excitement about this journey and about what lies ahead. It's like a surprise. It's like Christmas every day. You never know what to expect with a new coach, but that in and of itself may be a sign that you're right where you belong. And when you don't know what to expect, then when stuff happens, to your point, you enjoy it so much more. It's like, wow, this is so different. Yay, what's tomorrow? You know, you're actually present and in the moment throughout every single day and every single, you know, as you get closer. 8 weeks out, 7 weeks out, 6 weeks out. Wow, this is so different, but you're right here in the moment. You don't even have the ability to know what comes next because you've never been there before.
And only because something feels different doesn't mean it's wrong.
Yeah.
Only because it's iffy or weird, that's normal because it's different.
Yeah.
But through repetition and over time, through consistency, that will become comfortable.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's funny you say that. I had 2 posing sessions with girls today, and I'm, you know, posing them and tweaking. I'm like, that's it right there. Hold that. And I'm getting ready to take a picture, and they're like, you know, I'm like, okay, loosen up, shake it out. And they're like, oh God. And I'm like, hurt? They're like, yeah. And I said, good, you're doing it right. You know, it's like posing. It's not going to be comfy, sis. It's not going to feel good, but you're right where you belong. First time I got my front pose right, woo, that was uncomfortable. I was like, you sure you want me looking like this? And then I saw the pictures that they took of me. And that's a beautiful, I think that's kind of like a great wrapping up point, because that's a wonderful analogy to think of yourself posing without a mirror. You know, when you can see the mirror, you're holding your front pose, you're probably looking at the wrong things. You're like, okay, looks good from this angle. And then you go see your judges and they're like, oh girl. And you're like, okay, well, I'm just going to trust your guidance because I don't have a mirror now. And you're like this, you know, and they're like, oh, it looks amazing. And you're like, really? Like this? And then you see your side by side, you're like, holy crap, that's me. That's my glute. Right? It didn't feel comfortable when you didn't have the mirror in front of you and you were just being led blindly. You were blind and you were just being led to your front poses. But when you saw that glute in your front pose, you were like, mm-hmm. And on that note,
on the glute note,
on the glutes, we always have to end on the glutes. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on for episode 1.
Thank you, Maddie. I appreciate you greatly.
Well, that's it, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. If you guys are enjoying this type of content, please be sure to leave a comment down below and let me know your thoughts. I know some of you guys really like my full day of eatings and my day in a life vlogs, and I certainly want to provide those for you guys as well. But to be honest, not much is changing. But I love to switch things up, and I also love to make sure that I'm giving you guys you know, the whole picture, and the whole picture certainly addresses what's up here. So stay tuned for next week's video. It always helps me when you give this video a thumbs up if it's something that you enjoyed, and when you subscribe. Our channel is growing, and it truly means the world to me that I have a new community, and it includes you. If you guys haven't yet, be sure to go head over to my Instagram page and introduce yourself, because if you don't, you know I'm going to reach out to you. Anyways, that's all for now. I hope you guys have a wonderful week and be kind to yourselves.